The drawing room fell silent the moment Lady Ashford spoke. Not the polite kind of silence, the kind that cuts. Eliza Harrow stood frozen in her emerald gown, blood draining from her face as every eye in the room turned to her. "Pregnant," the older woman said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "How convenient." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Eliza's gaze snapped to Victor, her husband, standing 3 feet away with his champagne glass raised halfway to his lips. "Say something," she begged silently. "Defend me. Tell them it's a lie." He lowered the glass and said nothing. If you want to see how far this story of betrayal, silence, and impossible choices travels, drop a comment with your city below. Hit that like button and stay until the end, because what happens next will shatter everything you think you know about love and loyalty. The Ashford estate didn't feel like a home. It felt like a museum, one where Eliza was always the least valuable exhibit. She'd known that from the first week of her marriage, when the servants stopped meeting her eyes. When Victor's mother, Lady Constance Ashford, began rearranging furniture in rooms Eliza had just decorated, as if erasing fingerprints from glass. When Victor himself started kissing her only in hallways no one walked through, touching her hand under tables where no one could see. But tonight was different. Tonight, the invisible cage she'd been living in suddenly became visible to everyone. The drawing room was full of people who mattered. Lord Pemberton, whose shipping empire controlled half the eastern trade routes. Senator Grayson, whose vote could topple administrations. Margaret Caldwell, whose society columns could ruin reputations with a single well-placed sentence. They stood in clusters, holding crystal glasses, their laughter measured and sharp. Eliza had worn green because Victor once told her it made her eyes look like coastal water. She'd pinned her hair the way he liked. She'd smiled at his colleagues, nodded at the right moments, played the role she'd been handed without complaint. And then Lady Ashford had walked into the center of the room and detonated her life. "Eliza, darling," the older woman had said, voice dripping with false warmth. "You're looking rather full lately. Should we be expecting happy news?" The room had gone still. Eliza's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry?" "Oh, don't be coy." Lady Ashford's smile didn't reach her eyes. "It's obvious to anyone paying attention. The way you've been refusing wine, the nausea at breakfast, the weight you've put on." She tilted her head, her gaze raking over Eliza's body like she was livestock being appraised. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. "I'm not—" "How convenient," Lady Ashford continued, voice rising just enough to ensure everyone heard. "Barely 8 months married and already securing your place in this family." Her tone made securing sound like stealing. Murmurs rippled through the room. Margaret Caldwell's eyebrows arched with interest. Senator Grayson coughed into his fist. Eliza's vision tunneled. Her hands went cold. This wasn't just an insult, it was an execution. A public one. Lady Ashford had just accused her of being a gold digger, a schemer, a woman who'd trapped her son with a pregnancy. And the worst part? She wasn't even pregnant. "Lady Ashford, I assure you," Eliza started, but her voice came out too thin, too desperate. "Victor," Lady Ashford said smoothly, turning to her son, "you must be thrilled." That was when Eliza made the mistake of looking at him. Victor Ashford stood near the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel, his posture relaxed in a way that suggested he'd been carved from marble. Tall, sharp-featured, with dark hair that always looked like he'd just run his fingers through it. He wore his tailored suit the way some men wore armor, and he was staring at his champagne glass like it held the answer to a question he didn't want to ask. "Victor," Eliza said, her voice breaking. He looked up. Their eyes met. "Say something," she thought. "Tell them it's not true. Tell them your mother is wrong. Defend me." Victor's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth and closed it again. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10. Margaret Caldwell whispered something to the woman beside her. Eliza felt something crack inside her chest. Victor took a breath. "Mother," he said quietly, "this isn't the time." Not a denial, not a defense, just a polite request to change the subject. Lady Ashford's smile sharpened. "Of course, darling. Forgive me." She turned back to the room, raising her glass. "To family," she said brightly. "To family," the guests echoed. Eliza stood there, trembling, as the conversation moved on like she'd never spoken at all. She didn't remember leaving the drawing room. One moment she was standing there, drowning in humiliation, and the next she was in the hallway, her heels clicking too loud against the marble floor. Her breathing came in short, uneven gasps. Her hands shook so badly she had to press them against the wall to steady herself. He didn't defend you. The thought circled like a vulture. He stood there and let her destroy you, and he said nothing. Footsteps echoed behind her. Eliza. Victor's voice, low, careful. She didn't turn around. Eliza, wait. Don't! The word came out sharper than she intended. She spun to face him, and the look on his face, concern, guilt, something she couldn't name, made her angrier. Don't you dare ask me to wait! He stopped a few feet away, hands half raised like he was approaching a wounded animal. I know you're upset. Upset? She laughed, and it sounded wrong even to her own ears. Your mother just accused me of trapping you with a pregnancy in front of half of high society, and you stood there like a statue. Her voice cracked. You didn't say a word. I couldn't. You wouldn't. Victor flinched. It's not that simple. Then explain it to me, Eliza demanded, stepping closer. Explain why you can touch me in private, but won't even look at me in public. Explain why you tell me you love me in our bedroom, but act like I'm a stranger everywhere else. Explain why you let your mother humiliate me and didn't say a single goddamn word. He looked away. That was all the answer she needed. You're a coward, she whispered. Victor's head snapped back toward her, and for a moment she saw something flash in his eyes. Anger, maybe, or shame. You don't understand the position I'm in. Then help me understand. I can't. Why not? Because, he stopped, jaw working, because it would cost me everything. The words hung between them like a confession. Eliza stared at him. What does that mean? Victor looked at her for a long moment, something desperate flickering across his face. Then he shook his head. Not here. Not now. Then when, Victor? When are you going to stop hiding me? He reached for her hand. She jerked it away. Eliza, don't touch me. Her voice was shaking now, but she didn't care. Not unless you're willing to do it where people can see. She turned and walked away before he could answer. The bedroom felt too big. Eliza sat on the edge of the bed, still in her green dress, staring at the wall. The room was decorated in cream and gold, expensive and cold. Victor's side of the bed was perfectly made. He rarely slept there. Most nights he stayed in his study. Or so he said. She heard the door open behind her. I asked you not to follow me, she said without turning around. I know. Victor's voice was quiet. He stepped into the room but didn't come closer. I needed to make sure you were all right. I'm not. Silence. My mother was out of line tonight, he said finally. Eliza laughed bitterly. Out of line, that's what you're calling it. I'll speak to her. Will you? She turned to look at him. Will you tell her she was wrong? Will you tell her to apologize? Or will you just ask her to be more discreet next time she decides to destroy me in public? Victor's expression tightened. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Eliza stood, her dress rustling. I gave up everything to marry you, my work, my independence, my life, and for what? To be your dirty little secret? To be invisible unless we're alone? You're not invisible. Then why does it feel like I am? He didn't answer. Eliza crossed the room until she was standing in front of him, close enough to see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. I love you, she said quietly, but I don't know if I can keep doing this. Victor's hand came up, hesitant, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. I love you too. Then show me. Her voice broke. Not here, not in the dark, out there, where it matters. His hand dropped. I can't, he said again, and Eliza realized, with a sinking certainty, that he meant it. Well, the next morning, Victor was gone before she woke up. Eliza found a note on the nightstand. Had to leave early for a meeting. We'll talk tonight. They didn't talk that night, or the night after. Victor became a ghost in his own house, present at meals when his mother insisted, absent everywhere else. When they passed each other in hallways, He looked at her like she was something fragile he didn't know how to hold. And Lady Ashford's campaign began in earnest. It started small. The maid who usually attended Eliza, a kind woman named Iris who'd been with the family for years, was reassigned without explanation. In her place came a younger girl, sharp-eyed and cold, who reported everything Eliza did back to Lady Ashford. Eliza's invitations to social events stopped arriving. Her letters went unanswered. When she tried to leave the estate for errands, the car was always unavailable. She was being erased, and Victor said nothing. One afternoon, Eliza found Lady Ashford in the conservatory, trimming roses with silver shears. "Eliza," the older woman said without looking up, "how lovely to see you." "I want to know what you're doing," Eliza said flatly. Lady Ashford smiled. "I'm gardening, dear. Would you like to help?" "You know what I mean." The shears snipped through a stem. A white rose fell into the basket at Lady Ashford's feet. "I'm protecting my son." "From what?" "From mistakes." Lady Ashford finally looked at her, and her eyes were cold as winter. "You were a distraction, Eliza. A lovely one, I'll admit, but Victor has responsibilities, a legacy to uphold, and you—" She tilted her head. "You're not part of that legacy." Eliza's hands curled into fists. "I'm his wife." "On paper." Lady Ashford's smile didn't waver. "But we both know that doesn't mean what you think it means." "What are you talking about?" "Ask him." She turned back to the roses. "If he's brave enough to tell you the truth." Eliza didn't wait for a night. She found Victor in his study, bent over a stack of contracts, his sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked up when she walked in, and something in her expression made him set down his pen. "We need to talk," she said. "Eliza? Now." He stood slowly. "All right." She closed the door behind her and locked it. "Your mother said something to me today." Victor's jaw tightened. "What did she say?" "That I should ask you the truth. About us. About why I'm—" She swallowed. "Why I'm invisible." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed to the window, hands in his pockets, staring out at the gardens. "I was hoping we'd have more time before this conversation." "Well, we don't." Eliza's voice shook. "So tell me, Victor, what is she talking about?" He exhaled slowly. "Our marriage wasn't ordinary. I know that. I've lived that. No, I mean—" He turned to face her. "It was arranged, but not in the way you think." Eliza frowned. "What does that mean?" Victor hesitated. Then, like a dam breaking, the words came out. "My mother made a deal with the Grayson family. Political alliances, trade agreements, support in the Senate. In exchange, I had to marry someone they approved of." "And they approved of me?" "No." His voice was quiet. "They didn't." Eliza's breath caught. "Then why?" "Because I refused." Victor stepped closer. "I told my mother I wouldn't marry anyone I didn't choose. I threatened to walk away from everything, the estate, the business, the political connections, all of it." "So she agreed?" "She compromised." His voice turned bitter. "She said I could marry you, love you, keep you, but only in private. In public, I had to maintain appearances, attend events alone, act like—" He trailed off. "Like I didn't exist," Eliza finished. Victor nodded. The room felt like it was spinning. "And you agreed to this?" "I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice, Victor. Not if I wanted to keep you." His voice rose raw and desperate. "They would have destroyed you, Eliza. My mother, the Graysons, all of them. They would have ruined your reputation, your career, everything. This was the only way I could protect you." "By hiding me?" "By keeping you safe." Eliza stared at him, and suddenly everything made sense. The silence, the distance, the way he loved her only in shadows. It wasn't because he was ashamed of her. It was because he'd sold her. "You traded me," she whispered. "You traded my dignity, my voice, my existence for power. I traded everything to keep you." "No." Tears burned in her eyes. "You traded me to keep yourself." Victor looked like she'd struck him. "That's not— You built our entire marriage on a lie, Victor. You made me believe I wasn't enough, that I was the problem, and all this time you were just—" She laughed, bitter and broken. "You were just too much of a coward to choose me over them." I chose you. In the dark. Her voice cracked. You chose me in rooms where no one could see. You chose me in ways that didn't cost you anything. That's not love, Victor. That's convenience. He reached for her. Eliza, please. She stepped back. Don't. I can fix this. How? She wiped her eyes roughly. How are you going to fix this? Are you going to stand in front of those people and tell them the truth? Are you going to defy your mother? Are you going to choose me in the light? Victor's silence was answer enough. Eliza nodded, something final settling over her like snow. That's what I thought. She turned toward the door. Where are you going? I don't know. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. But I know I can't stay here. Not like this. Not as your secret. Eliza. She looked back at him one last time. If you ever find the courage to choose me where people can see, come find me. Until then, her voice broke. I'm done being invisible. She walked out of the study and didn't look back. 3 days later, she discovered she was pregnant. The doctor confirmed it in a quiet office with pale green walls. 8 weeks along. Healthy. A boy, most likely. Eliza sat in the examination room long after the doctor left, staring at the test results in her hands. She thought of Victor's face when she told him she was leaving, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing keeping him from drowning. She thought of Lady Ashford's cold smile, the drawing room, the silence. She thought of the life growing inside her, a child who deserved better than a father who loved him only behind closed doors. And she thought of herself, what she'd given up, what she'd endured, what she'd become. When she walked out of that office, she still didn't know if she was going to tell Victor. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was done being a secret. And whatever happened next, it would happen in the light, where everyone could see. The pregnancy test sat in the bottom drawer of her nightstand, wrapped in tissue paper like something stolen. Eliza hadn't told anyone. Not the new maid who watched her every move. Not her sister, who'd stopped returning her calls after the wedding. Certainly not Victor, who'd spent the last 72 hours sending notes under her door that she didn't read. She sat at the window of the guest room she'd claimed as her own, watching rain streak down the glass. The estate stretched out below, manicured lawns, marble fountains, gardens designed by someone who'd never pulled a weed in their life. Beautiful. Empty. A prison with good landscaping. Her hand drifted to her stomach. Still flat. Still hers. But not for long. A knock at the door made her flinch. Mrs. Ashford? The new maid's voice was clipped, efficient. Lady Ashford requests your presence in the morning room. Eliza didn't move. Tell her I'm not feeling well. She said it wasn't a request, ma'am. Of course she did. Eliza stood, smoothing her dress. The mirror showed someone she barely recognized. Thinner, paler, with shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't hide. She looked like a woman who'd been slowly erased. Fine, she said. I'll be down in 10 minutes. The maid hesitated. She said immediately, ma'am. Then she'll have to wait 9 more minutes, won't she? The maid's lips pressed into a thin line. She left without another word. Eliza counted to 60 before following. The morning room was all windows and white furniture designed to look airy and welcoming. It felt like an interrogation chamber. Lady Ashford sat at the center of it, pouring tea from a silver pot, her posture so perfect it looked rehearsed. Eliza, she said without looking up. Sit. Eliza remained standing. What do you want? Manners, for a start. Lady Ashford finally met her eyes. But I suppose that's too much to ask. You dragged me down here. I didn't come for pleasantries. Lady Ashford's smile was razor thin. No, you came because you have nowhere else to go. She set down the teapot with a delicate clink. Which brings me to my point. I'm prepared to make you an offer. I'm not interested. You haven't heard it yet. I don't need to. Eliza crossed her arms. Whatever you're about to say, the answer is no. Lady Ashford tilted her head, studying her like a scientist examining a particularly stubborn specimen. You're pregnant. The words hit like a fist to the gut. Eliza's face went carefully blank. Excuse me? Don't insult my intelligence. Lady Ashford leaned back in her chair. The doctor's office sent the bill here. Did you really think I wouldn't see it? Eliza's hands clenched. That's private. Nothing in this house is private, dear. You should have learned that by now. She picked up her teacup, took a sip. 8 weeks, if I'm reading the paperwork correctly, which means you knew before you threatened to leave my son. I didn't threaten. I told him. Semantics. Lady Ashford waved a hand dismissively. The point is you're carrying an Ashford heir, and that changes things. It doesn't change anything, doesn't it? Lady Ashford's eyes gleamed. You want Victor to acknowledge you publicly, to defy me, defy the arrangements we've made, throw away everything we've built. She leaned forward. But you're not stupid enough to think that will actually happen. Are you? Eliza said nothing. So here's what I'm offering. Lady Ashford set down her cup. You stay. You have the baby. You raise it here, in comfort, with every resource at your disposal, and in exchange, you stop making demands you know Victor can't meet. You want me to disappear. I want you to accept reality. Lady Ashford's voice hardened. My son loves you. I'm not blind, but love doesn't pay for estates, Eliza. It doesn't fund political campaigns. It doesn't secure alliances that keep this family powerful. She stood, crossing to the window. Victor made his choice when he married you. He chose love over duty, and I allowed it because I'm not a monster. But I won't let you destroy everything he's worked for just because you can't handle being discreet. Discreet? Eliza's laugh was bitter. Is that what you call it when your husband pretends you don't exist? I call it a compromise. It's a cage. Lady Ashford turned, and for the first time, something almost like pity flickered across her face. Then leave. Walk away. Raise the child on your own, with no money, no support, no name to protect you. She paused. But we both know you won't do that, because despite everything, you still love him, and you want that child to have a father. Eliza's throat tightened. So stop fighting me, Lady Ashford said quietly. Accept the life you have. It's more than most women get. Eliza looked at her. This woman who'd built her entire existence on control, on sacrifice, on swallowing her own voice until there was nothing left but the roles she played. And she saw her future, laid out like a map to nowhere. No, Eliza said. Lady Ashford blinked. I'm sorry? No. Eliza stepped forward. I won't accept this. I won't raise my child in a house where love is a secret, where his father is ashamed to claim him, where I have to pretend I'm grateful for scraps. Her voice steadied. You want me to stop fighting? You want me to disappear? Then you're going to have to force me out, because I'm done asking for permission to exist. Lady Ashford's expression went cold. You're making a mistake. Probably. Eliza turned toward the door. But at least it's mine. She walked out before Lady Ashford could respond. Her hands didn't start shaking until she reached the hallway. She'd just declared war on the most powerful woman she'd ever met. A woman who controlled everything, the staff, the money, the social connections that kept this world turning. A woman who could destroy her with a single well-placed rumor. And Eliza had nothing. No allies, no resources, no plan beyond sheer stubborn refusal to disappear. She pressed her back against the wall, breathing hard. What the hell did you just do? Footsteps echoed down the corridor. She looked up to see Victor striding toward her, his face tight with something between anger and panic. Eliza, did she call you? Eliza demanded. She texted me. He stopped a few feet away. She said you were being unreasonable. Unreasonable? Eliza laughed, sharp and humorless. I told her I wouldn't hide anymore. I'd say that's perfectly reasonable. Victor's jaw worked. You can't antagonize her like this. Why not? Because she'll make your life hell. She already has. Eliza's voice rose. Or did you miss the part where she fired my maid, blocked my calls, and accused me of gold digging in front of everyone we know? I know. Do you? She stepped closer. Because from where I'm standing, you've been hiding in your study for 3 days while she systematically erases me from this house. Trying to figure out how to fix this. There's nothing to figure out, Victor. You either stand up for me or you don't. It's that simple. It's not. It is. Eliza's voice cracked. And you keep choosing her, every single time. Victor ran a hand through his hair, and she saw it then. The exhaustion, the fear, the weight of trying to hold two impossible things together. He looked like a man being pulled apart. I'm pregnant, she said quietly. He froze. What? 8 weeks. She watched his face carefully. Your mother already knows. She made me an offer. Stay. Have the baby. Stop making demands. Her voice hardened. I told her no. Victor stared at her like she'd just told him the house was on fire. Eliza, I need to know something. She cut him off. If I leave, if I walk out of here today and never come back, would you come after me? Of course I would. Not in private. Her eyes locked on his. Publicly. In front of everyone. Would you choose me over this? She gestured at the estate, the life he'd built, the cage they were both trapped in. Victor opened his mouth, closed it. I don't know. The honesty of it gutted her. Okay, she whispered. Then I guess I have my answer. She walked away before he could see her cry. The next morning, Eliza woke to find her bank accounts frozen. She discovered it when she tried to pay for breakfast at a cafe in town, the one place outside the estate where she still felt human. Her card was declined. Then the second one. Then the third. The barista looked at her with something between pity and suspicion. Do you have cash? Eliza didn't. She left without the coffee, face burning, and called the bank from a payphone outside. I'm sorry, Mrs. Ashford, the manager said, his voice carefully neutral, but your accounts have been temporarily frozen pending review. Review of what? I'm not at liberty to say. You'll need to speak with the account holder. I am the account holder. A pause. Actually, ma'am, the primary account is held by the Ashford estate. You're listed as a secondary user, and Lord Ashford has requested... Eliza hung up. She stood on the sidewalk, shaking with rage. Not Victor. He wouldn't do this, which meant Lady Ashford. She'd cut off Eliza's money, her access, her ability to leave. Eliza walked back to the estate in the rain, soaked through by the time she reached the gates. The guard didn't meet her eyes as he opened them. She found Lady Ashford in the conservatory again, because of course she did. The older woman looked up from her roses with an expression of mild surprise. Eliza, you're wet. You froze my accounts. I secured the family finances. There's a difference. That money was mine. That money, Lady Ashford said calmly, comes from the Ashford estate, which means it's our money. And we can't have you running off with it, can we? She snipped another rose. Especially not in your condition. Eliza's hands clenched. You can't do this. I just did. Lady Ashford finally looked at her. You want to fight me, Eliza? Fine. But understand what you're up against. I control everything you have, your home, your income, your social standing. I can make you invisible in ways you haven't even imagined yet. Her smile didn't waver. So I'll ask you again. Will you accept my offer, or do we keep playing this game until you have nothing left? Eliza felt the trap closing around her. No money, no connections, no way out. And a baby growing inside her that deserved better than this. She thought of Victor's face when she'd told him about the pregnancy, the way he'd looked at her like she was both the answer and the problem. She thought of the drawing room, the silence, the years of disappearing she still had ahead if she stayed, and she made a decision. I need to make a call, she said quietly. Lady Ashford raised an eyebrow. To whom? That's none of your business. Everything you do is my business. Eliza met her eyes. Then you'd better listen carefully, because I'm about to make it very interesting. She walked out of the conservatory, found the landline in the library, and dialed a number she'd memorized years ago. It rang 3 times before a woman answered. Caldwell residence? This is Eliza Ashford, she said, her voice steady. I need to speak with Margaret Caldwell. Tell her I have a story she's going to want to hear. There was a pause. Then, 1 moment, please. Eliza waited, heart pounding. Margaret Caldwell's voice came through the line, sharp with curiosity. Mrs. Ashford, what a surprise! I want to make a deal, Eliza said. I'm listening. Eliza took a breath. This was it. The point of no return. You publish a column every week about high society. Who's in, who's out, who's hiding what. I'm aware of my own work, dear. Then you know people read it, trust it, use it to decide who matters. Flattery won't get you anywhere. What do you want? I want you to publish the truth about my marriage, Eliza said. About the arrangement, the deal, the reason I've been invisible for the last 8 months. Silence. Then Margaret laughed, low and delighted. You want to burn down your own house. I want people to see it was never mine to begin with. And what do you get out of this? Leverage. Eliza's grip tightened on the phone. Your column comes out in 2 days. That gives me 48 hours to make Victor choose, publicly, in front of everyone. Her voice hardened. And if he doesn't, at least the world will know why. You realize this will destroy you. I'm already being destroyed. At least this way I go down fighting. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. All right, she said finally. I'll do it. But I need details. Names, dates, proof. You'll have it. And Eliza? Margaret's voice softened, just slightly. Once I publish this, there's no taking it back. You understand that? I do. Good. A pause. I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Eliza set down the phone, her hands trembling. She'd just lit a match in a room full of gasoline, and in 48 hours, everything was going to burn. She found Victor in his study that evening, surrounded by paperwork he wasn't reading. He looked up when she walked in. Eliza, I need to tell you something. She closed the door behind her. And you need to listen without interrupting. His expression shifted, wary, cautious. All right. I called Margaret Caldwell today. Victor went very still. Why? Because your mother froze my bank accounts. Because she's systematically cutting off every avenue I have to leave. Because I'm trapped in this house with a woman who wants me erased and a husband who won't defend me. Her voice shook. So I gave Margaret a story. About us. About the arrangement. About why you've been hiding me. The color drained from Victor's face. You didn't. It publishes in 2 days. Eliza! He stood, knocking papers to the floor. Do you have any idea what you've just done? I forced your hand. You've destroyed us. We were already destroyed. Her voice rose to match his. You just didn't want to admit it. Victor stared at her, chest heaving. You can't. We have to stop her. I'll call Margaret. I'll pay her. She won't take your money. I already asked. Then I'll... He stopped, running both hands through his hair. There has to be a way to fix this. There is. Eliza stepped closer. You can tell the truth yourself. Before she does. You can stand in front of everyone and say, I made a deal. I chose power over my wife, and I was wrong. Her voice cracked. You can choose me, Victor. Publicly. Where it costs you something. You don't understand what that would mean. I understand perfectly. Tears burned in her eyes. It means losing the alliances, the political connections, your mother's approval, everything you've built. She took a shaking breath. But if you don't do it, if you let Margaret publish that story without defending me, then you lose me and the baby. Forever. Victor looked at her like she'd stabbed him. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Eliza wiped her eyes roughly. But it's the only choice you have left. Eliza, 2 days, Victor. She turned toward the door. That's how long you have to decide if I'm worth fighting for. She walked out. And this time, he didn't follow. The next 36 hours passed in a strange, suspended silence. Eliza stayed in her room. Victor stayed in his. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Lady Ashford tried to corner her twice, once in the library, once in the hallway outside her bedroom. Both times, Eliza walked past her without speaking. She ate when the maid brought food, slept in scattered, restless intervals, watched the clock tick down, and waited. On the morning of the publication, she woke to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a note in Victor's handwriting. I'm sorry, I can't do what you're asking, but I won't let you go through this alone. Come to the drawing room at noon, please. Eliza read it 3 times. Then she got dressed. The drawing room was full, not as crowded as the night of the initial humiliation, but enough. Lord Pemberton, Senator Grayson, Margaret Caldwell herself, standing near the window with a glass of wine and an expression of barely contained anticipation, and Victor, standing at the center of it all, pale and hollow-eyed. Lady Ashford sat in her usual chair, spine rigid, face unreadable. Eliza stopped in the doorway. What is this? She asked quietly. Victor turned to her. I asked them to come. Why? He took a breath. Because you were right. The room went silent. Victor looked at his mother. I'm sorry, he said, but I can't do this anymore. Lady Ashford's expression didn't change. Victor, no. His voice was steady. I've spent 8 months lying, hiding, pretending that what we have is sustainable. And it's not. He turned to the room. Most of you know there was an arrangement, a deal made to secure alliances, political favor, power. He paused. What you don't know is that I agreed to it. I traded my wife's dignity for your approval, and I've been trying to justify it ever since. Margaret Caldwell pulled out a notebook. Victor's hands clenched. I told myself I was protecting her, that this was the only way, but the truth is, I was protecting myself. From having to choose, from having to sacrifice something that mattered. He looked at Eliza. And I'm done. Victor, Lady Ashford said, her voice low and warning. Think about what you're doing. I have. He turned back to the room. Effective immediately, I'm withdrawing from the Grayson Alliance. I'm stepping back from the political arrangements tied to this family. And I'm making it very clear, publicly, in front of all of you, that my wife is not a secret. She's not an inconvenience. She's the woman I chose. And if that costs me everything else, then so be it. The silence was deafening. Lord Pemberton cleared his throat. You realize what this means? I do. You'll lose the Senate backing, the trade agreements, half the connections that keep this estate running. I know. Senator Grayson shook his head. You're committing political suicide. Maybe. Victor's voice didn't waver. But I'd rather do that than keep committing to a lie. Lady Ashford stood, her face white with fury. You're throwing away everything we've built. No. Victor met her eyes. I'm choosing what I should have chosen from the beginning. He crossed the room to Eliza, and in front of everyone he took her hand. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For all of it. For the silence. For the cowardice. For making you feel like you had to burn it all down just to be seen. His voice cracked. You deserve better than what I gave you. Eliza stared at him, tears streaming down her face. I don't know if this fixes anything, Victor continued. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I need you to know I'm done hiding. From now on, wherever I go, you go. Whatever I face, we face together, in front of everyone. He squeezed her hand. Starting now. Eliza looked around the room, at Margaret, scribbling notes. At Lord Pemberton and Senator Grayson, their faces carefully neutral. At Lady Ashford, trembling with rage. And she looked at Victor, really looked at him. He'd just destroyed everything for her, in front of witnesses, where it counted. Okay, she whispered. Victor's eyes widened. Okay? Don't make me repeat it. She managed a watery smile. I'm still furious with you. I know. And this doesn't fix everything. I know. But it's a start. He pulled her into his arms, and she let him, burying her face in his shoulder as the room erupted into murmurs. Margaret Caldwell flipped her notebook closed with a satisfied snap. Lady Ashford swept out of the room without a word. And Eliza realized, for the first time since she'd married into this family, that she could breathe. The breath lasted approximately 4 hours. That's how long it took for the consequences to start rolling in like a storm no one could outrun. The first call came while they were still in the drawing room. Victor's phone buzzed against the table, once, twice, then continuously until he finally picked it up. Ashford, he said, his arms still around Eliza's shoulders. She felt him go rigid. I understand, he said after a long pause. Yes, I expected that. Another pause. No, my position hasn't changed. He hung up. Who was that? Eliza asked quietly. Grayson's chief of staff. Victor's jaw was tight. The senator is withdrawing his endorsement for the infrastructure bill, effective immediately. Lord Pemberton, who hadn't left yet, made a noise somewhere between a cough and a laugh. That's just the beginning, son. Wait until the trade partners hear about this. Let them hear, Victor said. Pemberton shook his head. Brave, stupid, but brave. He set down his glass. Good luck, Ashford. You're going to need it. He left. Margaret Caldwell lingered near the door, watching them with the keen interest of someone witnessing a car crash in slow motion. I'll run a follow-up piece, she said. Public declaration of love. Sacrifice for principle. It'll sell well. I don't care if it sells, Victor said flatly. You should. Margaret's smile was sharp. Because in about 6 hours, every newspaper in the city is going to run some version of this story, and the version I write is the only one that might not completely destroy you. She tilted her head. Consider it a wedding gift. She left before either of them could respond. Eliza pulled away from Victor slightly. What did she mean, completely destroy you? Victor exhaled slowly. The people my family does business with, they don't just care about profit. They care about image, reputation, stability. He looked at her. What I just did? In their eyes, it's chaos. And chaos is bad for business. So they'll what? Stop working with you? Some of them, yes. He ran a hand through his hair. Others will renegotiate, demand better terms, use this as leverage. His voice dropped. And a few will just walk away. Cut ties completely. Eliza's stomach twisted. How bad is it going to get? I don't know. He met her eyes. But I meant what I said. Whatever happens, we face it together. She wanted to believe him. She did believe him. But believing and surviving were two different things. The second call came an hour later, then a third. Then they stopped counting. By evening, Victor's phone was a constant stream of notifications. Emails, texts, voicemails from business partners, political allies, people Eliza had never heard of, all saying variations of the same thing. You've made a mistake. Reconsider your position. This is unacceptable. Victor stopped answering after the first dozen. He sat in his study, staring at the phone like it was a grenade with the pin already pulled. Eliza stood in the doorway, watching him. You should eat something. I'm not hungry. Victor, I'm fine, Eliza. He didn't look fine. He looked like a man who'd just set himself on fire and was waiting to see how long it took to burn. She crossed the room and took the phone out of his hand. You need to stop reading these. I need to know what's coming. You already know what's coming. She set the phone on the desk, face down. The question is whether you're going to let it break you before it even gets here. Victor looked up at her and something in his expression cracked. I just torpedoed everything my family spent 3 generations building in one afternoon because I couldn't stand the thought of losing you. His voice wavered. What if I made the wrong choice? Do you think you did? He hesitated. No. Then stop second-guessing yourself. Eliza knelt in front of him, taking his hands. You did the right thing. Maybe not the smart thing or the safe thing, but the right thing. She squeezed his fingers. And I'm not going to let you regret it. Victor pulled her into his lap, burying his face in her hair. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. I know. She held him tighter. So am I. They stayed like that until the sun went down and the house fell into darkness. Lady Ashford didn't speak to them for 3 days. She moved through the estate like a ghost, silent and pale. Her presence felt more in absence than action. The staff walked on eggshells. Meals became tense, wordless affairs where the only sound was silverware against china. On the 4th day, she finally broke her silence. Eliza was in the library trying to focus on a book she wasn't reading when Lady Ashford appeared in the doorway. We need to talk, the older woman said. Eliza set down the book. I'm listening. Lady Ashford stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She looked older than Eliza had ever seen her, worn, tired, like something vital had been drained out of her. You won, she said flatly. Eliza frowned. This wasn't a competition, wasn't it? Lady Ashford crossed to the window. You wanted my son to choose you over everything else. He did. You wanted to be acknowledged publicly. You are. You wanted to destroy the arrangements I spent years building. Her voice hardened. Congratulations. You succeeded. I didn't want to destroy anything, Eliza said quietly. I just wanted to be treated like a person. And in the process, you've cost this family millions, contracts, alliances. Influence we'll never get back. Lady Ashford turned to face her. I hope it was worth it. Eliza stood. Your son was miserable. I was disappearing. Nothing about that was sustainable. Sustainability is a matter of perspective. No, it's a matter of basic human dignity. Eliza's voice shook. You asked me to live in the shadows for the rest of my life. To raise my child in a house where his father couldn't acknowledge him, and you think that's reasonable? I think it's practical. It's cruel. Lady Ashford's expression didn't change. The world is cruel, Eliza. I learned that a long time ago. I thought if I could control enough variables, build enough walls, make the right deals, I could protect my son from it. She paused. But you've torn down every wall I built, and now we'll all pay the price. Maybe the walls were the problem, Eliza said. Lady Ashford studied her for a long moment. You really believe that, don't you? I do. Then you're more naive than I thought. She moved toward the door, then stopped. There's something you should know. The Grayson family isn't just withdrawing their political support. They're calling in debts, financial ones. Victor signed agreements when you married, guarantees tied to the alliance. Her eyes met Eliza's. If you can't pay, they'll take the estate. Eliza's blood went cold. What? You heard me. Lady Ashford's voice was almost gentle. Your husband just bet everything we own on you. I hope you're worth it. She left. Eliza stood frozen in the library, the weight of Lady Ashford's words crushing down on her like a physical thing. They'll take the estate. She found Victor in the East Wing, overseeing the removal of paintings from the walls. Men in uniforms carried gilt-frame portraits out the front door, loading them into trucks. What's happening? Eliza asked. Victor didn't turn around. Liquidation. We're selling off assets to cover the immediate debts. Your mother said the Graysons are calling in loans. They are. Why didn't you tell me? Because there's nothing you can do about it. He finally looked at her, and his face was carved from stone. This is my problem, Eliza, not yours. We're married. Your problems are my problems. Not this one. His voice was firm. You didn't sign those contracts. You didn't make those deals. I did. Because of me. Because of them. Victor gestured sharply at nothing. Because my mother thought she could control my entire life. Because the Graysons thought they could buy loyalty. Because everyone in this goddamn world thinks people are commodities. He took a breath. You're not responsible for their greed. But I'm responsible for pushing you to break the agreement. You gave me a choice, Victor said quietly. For the first time in my life, someone gave me a real choice. And I made it. He stepped closer. I don't regret it. Even if we lose everything? Even then. Eliza wanted to believe him, but watching another painting disappear out the door, a landscape that had hung in the entrance hall for over a century, made it hard. How bad is it? She asked. Victor was quiet for a moment. The Graysons are demanding $2 million. Immediately. We don't have it. So what happens? They foreclose. We have 30 days to pay, or they take the estate, the business holdings, everything tied to the family assets. He exhaled. I'm trying to negotiate an extension, sell off enough to cover the debt. But it's... He trailed off. It's not enough, Eliza finished. Not yet. She looked around the hallway, at the empty spaces on the walls, the dust outlines where furniture used to stand. The house was being stripped bare piece by piece, and it was her fault. I'm sorry, she whispered. Victor turned to her, frowning. For what? For this. For forcing your hand, for... Stop. He crossed to her, taking her face in his hands. You didn't force anything. I made a choice, and I'd make it again. His thumb brushed her cheek. Don't apologize for asking me to be a decent human being, but no. His voice was gentle but absolute. We're in this together, remember? That means you don't get to carry this alone. Eliza leaned into his touch, closing her eyes. She wished it were that simple. The pregnancy started showing 2 weeks later. Not much. Just a slight curve to her belly that couldn't be hidden by loose clothing anymore. She caught the staff staring when they thought she wasn't looking, heard the whispers that followed her through hallways. Lady Ashford pretended not to notice. Victor noticed everything. He started hovering. Not in an obvious way, but Eliza felt it. The way he'd appear whenever she climbed stairs, offering his arm. The way he'd insist she sit down during meals, even when she wasn't tired. The way he'd look at her stomach like it held something fragile and terrifying. You're doing it again, she said one morning over breakfast. Doing what? Staring. Victor's eyes snapped up to her face. I wasn't... You were. She set down her fork. I'm pregnant, not dying. I know that. Then stop treating me like I might shatter. He was quiet for a moment. I'm trying to take care of you. I don't need to be taken care of. I need you to trust that I can handle myself. I do trust you. He paused. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. So do I, Eliza admitted. But thinking about it doesn't stop it from happening. It just makes us miserable in the meantime. Victor reached across the table, taking her hand. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Just breathe. She squeezed his fingers. We're going to be okay. She said it with more confidence than she felt. The 30th day came faster than either of them expected. Eliza woke to find Victor already gone, his side of the bed cold, his study empty. She found him in the library, surrounded by paperwork, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Did you sleep at all? She asked. A few hours. He didn't look up. I was going through the liquidation reports, trying to find something we missed. And? We're still short by $400,000. Eliza's heart sank. They'd sold everything that wasn't nailed down. Paintings, furniture, land holdings, investments. They'd auctioned off family heirlooms, negotiated with creditors, scraped together every cent they could find. And it still wasn't enough. What happens now? She asked. The Graysons come to collect. Victor's voice was flat. Their lawyers arrive at noon. We sign over the estate, the business, everything. He finally looked at her. And then we leave. Leave to where? I don't know. He stood, crossing to the window. I have a few contacts who might hire me. Basic consulting work. It won't pay much, but it's something. He turned back to her. We'll find a small apartment, somewhere quiet, start over. Eliza tried to imagine it. Victor in a cramped apartment, working a job he was overqualified for, watching everything he'd known dissolve into nothing. Because of her. Because he'd chosen her. This isn't what you signed up for, she said quietly. Yes, it is. He crossed back to her, pulling her into his arms. I signed up for you. Everything else is just details. She buried her face in his chest, fighting tears. At 11:45, the lawyers arrived. 3 of them, dressed in identical black suits, carrying briefcases that probably cost more than most people's cars. They set up in the dining room, spreading contracts across the table like a battle plan. The lead lawyer, a man named Richardson with gray hair and cold eyes, barely looked at Victor. Mr. Ashford, he said, flipping through pages. We're here to finalize the transfer of assets per the Grayson agreement. If you'll just sign here, here, and initial here. Wait, Eliza said. Everyone turned to look at her. I need to speak with my husband, she said. Privately. Richardson frowned. Mrs. Ashford, we're on a tight schedule, so 5 minutes. Her voice was steel. That's all I'm asking. Victor was already standing. Excuse us. They stepped into the hallway. Victor closed the door behind them. What are you doing? He asked. Eliza took a breath. I have money. Victor blinked. What? From before we were married, an inheritance from my grandmother. I kept it in a separate account. She met his eyes. It's not much. Maybe 300,000. But combined with what we already have... No. Victor shook his head. Absolutely not. Victor, that's your money, Eliza. For you and the baby. I'm not taking it. It's our money. She grabbed his arm. We're married, remember? What's mine is yours. Not like this. His voice was firm. I won't let you sacrifice your security for my mistakes. They're not just your mistakes. Her voice rose. I pushed you into this. I called Margaret Caldwell. I forced your hand, and now I'm trying to fix it. By giving up everything you have? By saving everything we have. She stepped closer. This house, this life. It's not just yours anymore, Victor. It's ours. And I'm not going to stand here and watch it get taken away when I have the means to stop it. Victor stared at her, something complicated flickering across his face. If we do this, if we use your money, we'll have nothing left. No safety net. No backup plan. Then we start from zero. Eliza's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Together. He searched her face for a long moment. Then he kissed her, hard and desperate and full of something that felt like grief. Okay, he whispered against her lips. Okay. They went back into the dining room. Richardson looked up, impatient. Mr. Ashford, if we could please— We're paying the debt, Victor said. Richardson paused. I'm sorry? The full amount, $2 million. We're paying it. Victor pulled out his phone, opening his banking app. I'm transferring it now. Richardson's expression shifted from impatience to surprise. Mr. Ashford, I was under the impression you didn't have the funds. You were wrong. Victor hit send on the transfer. Check your account. Richardson pulled out his own phone. His eyebrows rose. Well, he said slowly, this is unexpected. Is the debt satisfied? Victor asked. Richardson scrolled through his screen. It appears so. Pending verification, of course, but he looked up. Yes, the debt is satisfied. Eliza felt her knees weaken. They'd done it. They'd saved the estate. Richardson started packing up his briefcase. We'll send official documentation within the week, but as of this moment, the foreclosure is canceled. He paused. Congratulations, Mr. Ashford. Victor didn't respond. The lawyers left. Eliza and Victor stood in the empty dining room, the silence pressing down on them like water. We just spent everything, Victor said quietly. I know. If anything goes wrong, if the business doesn't recover, if we can't rebuild, we have nothing left to fall back on. I know. He turned to her. Are you sure about this? Eliza took his hand, pressing it against her stomach where their child was growing. I've never been more sure of anything. Victor pulled her close, and they stood there in the ruins of everything they'd sacrificed, holding each other like drowning people clutching driftwood. Outside, the sun was setting, and neither of them knew if they'd just saved their future or destroyed it. The relief lasted less than a day. Eliza woke the next morning to the sound of shouting. She stumbled out of bed, pulling on a robe, and followed the noise downstairs. It was coming from the entrance hall. Victor's voice raised in anger, and another voice she didn't recognize. She rounded the corner to find Victor standing nose to nose with a man in an expensive suit. Lady Ashford stood off to the side, her face ashen. Completely unacceptable, the man was saying. You had an agreement. The agreement is void, Victor snapped. I paid the debt. We're done. You paid the Graysons. You didn't pay me. The man stepped closer. I loaned your mother $200,000 last year to cover estate taxes. With interest, that's now $250, and it's due. Victor went very still. What? You didn't know? The man's smile was cruel. Ask her. All eyes turned to Lady Ashford. She looked at the floor. It was a short-term loan. I thought I could pay it back before it became an issue. Mother. Victor's voice was dangerously quiet. What did you do? What I had to do to keep this family afloat while you were busy dismantling everything I built. When is it due? Eliza asked. The man turned to her. Yesterday. The room spun. We don't have that kind of money, Victor said. I know. The man pulled out a document, setting it on the hall table. Which is why I'm calling in collateral. You have 72 hours to pay, or I take the estate. He left. The door closed behind him with a sound like a gunshot. Eliza stared at Lady Ashford. You knew, she said. You knew we were emptying everything to pay the Graysons, and you didn't say anything about this. Lady Ashford's hands trembled. I thought I could handle it. Handle it? Victor's voice cracked. We just spent our last cent saving this place, and you're telling me there's another debt we can't pay? I made a mistake. You made a choice. Victor stepped toward her. You chose to hide this, just like you chose to make deals without telling me, just like you chose to treat my wife like she was nothing. His voice dropped. When does it stop, Mother? When do you stop sacrificing everyone around you for control? Lady Ashford's face crumpled. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect yourself. Victor turned away. And now we're all going to pay for it. He walked out. Eliza stood in the hallway, staring at the document on the table. 72 hours, $250,000, and no way to get it. She looked at Lady Ashford, and for the first time she saw the older woman for what she really was. Not a villain, not a monster. Just a terrified woman who'd spent so long building walls that she'd forgotten what they were supposed to protect. You've destroyed us, Eliza said quietly. Lady Ashford met her eyes. I know. Eliza picked up the document and left to find her husband. She found him in the garden, standing in the rain. Victor, don't. He didn't turn around. Just don't. Eliza stood beside him, rain soaking through her robe. We'll figure something out. There's nothing to figure out. His voice was hollow. We're out of options, out of money, out of time. He finally looked at her. I can't fix this, Eliza. Then we'll lose the estate. We'll lose everything. His hands clenched. The house, the business, our credibility, everything I just sacrificed for you, it's gone. The words hung between them like an accusation. For me, Eliza repeated slowly. You mean because of me? Victor's face changed. That's not what It is. She stepped back. You're blaming me. I'm not. You just said it. Everything I sacrificed for you. Like I forced you. Like this is my fault. Eliza, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. Tears mixed with rain on her face. You're standing here regretting your choice, wishing you'd stayed silent, kept the deals, kept me hidden. Her voice broke. Aren't you? Victor opened his mouth, closed it, and said nothing. The silence was answer enough. Eliza turned and walked back toward the house, her heart shattering with every step. Behind her, Victor called her name. She didn't stop. She made it to the bedroom before the sobs came, ugly, wrenching sounds that tore through her chest. She collapsed on the bed, holding her stomach, holding the child growing inside her who deserved so much better than this. Better than a family falling apart. Better than parents who couldn't decide if love was worth the cost. Better than a mother who destroyed everything trying to be seen. The door opened. Eliza didn't look up. Go away, she said. No. Victor's voice was rough. She felt the bed dip as he sat beside her. I'm not leaving. You should. Eliza, you were right. She forced herself to sit up, wiping her face. This is my fault. I pushed you. I forced you to choose. And now we've lost everything because I couldn't just accept. Victor grabbed her face, cutting her off with a kiss. When he pulled back, his eyes were fierce. Listen to me, he said. I don't regret choosing you. I don't regret any of it. And if you think for 1 second that I'm blaming you for my mother's lies or the Graysons' greed or any of this nightmare, you're wrong. But you said, I said something stupid because I'm scared and angry and I don't know how to fix this. His voice cracked. But I'm not angry at you. I'm angry at myself for not seeing this coming, for not protecting you better, for letting us get to this point. It's not your job to protect me from everything. Maybe not. He rested his forehead against hers. But it's my job to make sure you know I don't regret you. Ever. Eliza closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling over. We're going to lose the house, she whispered. I know. And the business. I know. And we're going to have to start over with nothing. I know. He pulled back slightly, meeting her eyes. But we'll have each other and our child, and that's more than enough. Eliza wanted to believe him, but as the rain pounded against the windows and the clock ticked down toward a deadline they couldn't meet, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at the edge of a cliff and the ground was about to give way. 72 hours. That's all they had left, and Eliza had no idea what came after. The fallout started before they'd even left the drawing room. Senator Grayson made the first move, a handshake with Lord Pemberton that lasted 3 seconds too long, accompanied by a look that said everything words didn't need to. Margaret Caldwell's phone buzzed 6 times in 2 minutes, each vibration a small detonation of gossip spreading through the city like wildfire. Victor kept his arm around Eliza's waist, anchoring her as the room emptied. People filed past them with expressions ranging from shock to thinly veiled satisfaction. No one congratulated them. No one said a word. When the last guest left, the silence felt heavier than the crowd had. Victor's hand was still shaking. Eliza pulled back just enough to see his face. Are you okay? I don't know. He laughed, but it came out wrong, too high, too sharp. I just destroyed my entire career in front of a journalist, so... No. Probably not okay. You could have warned me, she said quietly, about what you were going to do. If I told you, would you have believed me? She didn't answer. He nodded, like that confirmed something. I needed you to see it, not hear about it secondhand, not have it explained away later. His voice dropped. I needed you to watch me choose you. Eliza's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, thank you, or I love you, or this doesn't erase 8 months of silence. But the words tangled up somewhere between her chest and her mouth. The door to the drawing room swung open. Lady Ashford stood in the doorway, her face a mask of cold, controlled fury. She looked at Victor like he was a stranger. My office. Now. Mother, now. Victor glanced at Eliza. She squeezed his hand once, then let go. Go, she said quietly. I'll be upstairs. He hesitated, then followed his mother out. Eliza stood alone in the drawing room, surrounded by empty glasses and the faint smell of expensive perfume. Through the window, she could see the gardens, still perfect, still pristine, as if nothing had happened. But everything had happened, and she had no idea what came next. Victor found her an hour later sitting on the edge of their bed with her shoes off and her hands folded in her lap. He looked worse than before. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled like he'd been dragging his fingers through it. There was a red mark on his jaw, not quite a bruise, but close. Did she hit you? Eliza asked. She threw a paperweight. He touched his jaw gingerly. Missed, mostly. Victor, she's disowning me. His voice was flat, like he'd used up all his emotion in the last 60 minutes and had nothing left. Effective immediately, I'm cut off from the estate finances, the family accounts, the trust fund, everything. He sat down beside her, elbows on his knees. She said, if I want to choose you over the family, then I can do it without the family's money. Eliza's stomach dropped. Can she do that? The estate is in her name. Technically, she can do whatever she wants. He laughed bitterly. I always knew she had the power. I just never thought she'd actually use it. What does that mean for us? Victor was quiet for a long moment. It means we're broke. The word hung in the air between them. Eliza had grown up without money. She knew what broke looked like. But Victor had never lived a day of his life outside the safety net of wealth. He didn't know how to navigate a world where things cost more than you had. How broke? She asked carefully. I have a personal account she can't touch. About $40,000 in savings. He rubbed his face. That'll last us a few months if we're careful. After that, he trailed off. After that, we figure it out. He looked at her like she'd just suggested jumping off a bridge. Eliza, I don't know how to figure it out. I've never had a job that wasn't handed to me. I've never paid rent or bought groceries or... His voice cracked. I don't know how to take care of you like this. Then we'll learn. She took his hand. Together. You shouldn't have to. Maybe not. She met his eyes. But I'd rather be broke with you than rich and invisible. Victor stared at her and something in his expression shifted. Grief, maybe, or gratitude, or the beginning of understanding just how much he'd been given that he'd never earned. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know. I don't deserve you. Probably not. She squeezed his hand. But you chose me anyway. So now we deal with the consequences. He pulled her close, and they sat there in the fading afternoon light, holding on to each other like the only solid thing left in a world that had just come apart. The next morning, Margaret Caldwell's column hit the newsstands. The headline read, The Ashford Arrangement, How High Society's Golden Son Traded Love for Power. It was brutal, detailed, unflinching. Margaret had printed everything. The deal with the Graysons, the arrangement to keep Eliza hidden, the 8 months of public silence. She'd even included quotes from Victor's confession in the drawing room, his voice preserved in ink for everyone to dissect. By noon, it was everywhere. Society blogs picked it up. News outlets ran think pieces. Social media exploded with opinions, some sympathetic, some vicious, all of them loud. Eliza read the column once, sitting at the kitchen table while Victor paced behind her. She made me sound like a coward, he muttered. You were a coward. He stopped pacing. I thought you were on my side. I am. Eliza set down the paper. But that doesn't mean I'm going to lie to you. She stood, crossing to him. You made a terrible choice. You hurt me. And now the whole world knows it. Her voice softened. But you also stood up in front of everyone and admitted it. That counts for something. Does it? Victor looked at the paper like it might bite him. because all I see is my life being torn apart in print. Good. Eliza's voice was sharper than she intended. Maybe now you understand what it felt like for me. He flinched. She took a breath, steadying herself. I'm not trying to hurt you, Victor, but you need to feel this, all of it, because that's the only way you're going to understand what you put me through. I do understand. No, you don't. She stepped closer. You understand it intellectually. You know it was wrong, but you don't feel it yet, not the way I did. Her hands curled into fists. So let them tear you apart in the press. Let them call you a coward and a fraud. Let them question everything you've ever done. Her voice cracked. And then, when you're standing in the wreckage of your reputation with nothing left to hide behind, maybe you'll understand what it means to be invisible. Victor stared at her, something raw and broken flickering across his face. Then his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and went pale. It's Lord Pemberton. Answer it, Eliza said. Victor hesitated, then picked up. Hello? She couldn't hear Pemberton's side of the conversation, but she could see Victor's face as he listened, jaw tightening, eyes closing, shoulders sagging under the weight of whatever was being said. I understand, Victor said finally. Thank you for letting me know. He hung up. What did he say? Eliza asked. He's pulling his investments, all of them. Victor set the phone down carefully, like it might explode. He said he can't be associated with someone who's politically compromised. He laughed, hollow and bitter. That's what I am now, compromised. Eliza's chest tightened. Victor, it's fine. His voice was too controlled. I expected this. It's not fine. It will be. He looked at her and she saw it then. The fear beneath the composure, the panic he was barely keeping contained. It has to be. The calls kept coming. Over the next 3 days, Victor lost 2 business partnerships, 3 investment opportunities, and a board position he'd held for 5 years. Senator Grayson issued a public statement distancing himself from the Ashford family's personal matters. Margaret Caldwell wrote a follow-up column analyzing the political ramifications of Victor's confession. And through it all, Lady Ashford said nothing. But her silence was louder than any statement. Eliza watched Victor unravel in slow motion. He stopped sleeping, stopped eating properly, spent hours on his laptop, sending emails that went unanswered, making calls that went to voicemail. On the 4th day, she found him in his study at 3 a.m, surrounded by financial statements and half-empty coffee cups. You need to sleep, she said from the doorway. I need to find a way to fix this. He didn't look up. You can't fix it in one night. Then I'll work until I can. His voice was ragged. I have to do something, Eliza. I can't just sit here and watch everything fall apart. She crossed the room and gently closed his laptop. Yes, you can. He looked up at her, eyes red-rimmed. What? You can sit here and watch it fall apart. She knelt beside his chair. Because that's what's happening, Victor. Everything you built on lies and compromises and other people's approval, it's collapsing, and you need to let it. I don't know how. I know. She took his hands. But you're not alone this time. That's the difference. Victor's face crumpled. He pulled her close, burying his face in her shoulder, and for the first time since the drawing room, he broke. He cried like a man who'd been holding it together for too long, like someone who'd finally realized the cost of the choices he'd made. Eliza held him, stroking his hair, whispering things that didn't need to be words. Just sounds, just comfort, just the presence of someone who wasn't leaving. When he finally quieted, his voice was hoarse. I don't know who I am without all of this. Then we'll figure that out too, she said quietly. How? One day at a time. She pulled back to look at him. Starting with getting some sleep. He nodded, exhausted, and wrung out. They went to bed together for the first time in weeks, and for the first time in months, Victor reached for her without hesitation, not hiding, not checking to see if anyone might notice, just holding her because he needed to. Eliza fell asleep listening to his heartbeat, thinking that maybe, just maybe, they were finally building something real. The turning point came from an unexpected place. A week after Margaret's column, Eliza received a letter. Hand-delivered, no return address, the paper expensive and cream-colored. She opened it in the garden, where she'd taken to spending her mornings now that the house felt less like a prison. The letter was short. Mrs. Ashford, I read Margaret Caldwell's column with great interest. Your situation resonates with me more than you might imagine. I'd like to meet with you if you're willing. I believe we may be able to help each other. Sincerely, Victoria Harrington. Eliza blinked. Victoria Harrington, owner of Harrington Media, one of the largest publishing empires in the country. A woman who'd built her fortune from nothing after her own very public, very messy divorce from a man who'd tried to bury her. She read the letter 3 more times, then went to find Victor. He was in the garden shed. They'd moved out of the main house 2 days ago into a smaller cottage on the edge of the estate that Lady Ashford hadn't bothered to claim. It had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that barely fit both of them, and a roof that leaked when it rained. Eliza loved it. I got a letter, she said, handing it to him. Victor read it, his eyebrows climbing toward his hairline. Victoria Harrington wants to meet with you. I know. Why? I have no idea. Eliza leaned against the doorframe. But I think I should find out. Victor looked at her for a long moment. What if it's a trap? Then I'll deal with it. She smiled slightly. I'm getting good at traps. He didn't smile back. I don't like the idea of you going alone. I won't be alone. I'll take you with me. Eliza. Victor? She stepped closer. You stood up for me in public. Now let me do the same for you. Let me be the one who fights while you figure out how to rebuild. He looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just nodded. Okay, he said quietly. But if anything feels wrong, we leave. Deal? Deal. They met Victoria Harrington at a cafe in the city, neutral ground, public enough to be safe. Victoria was smaller than Eliza expected, barely 5'3", with silver hair cut sharp and precise. She wore a black suit that probably cost more than Eliza's wedding dress, and carried herself like someone who'd fought for every inch of space she occupied. Mrs. Ashford. Victoria stood to shake her hand. Thank you for coming, and Mr. Ashford. She nodded at Victor. I'm glad you're here too. They sat. Victoria ordered coffee for all of them, made small talk about the weather and the traffic, and then got straight to the point. I'm going to be blunt, she said. I want to offer you a job. Eliza blinked. Excuse me? A job. At Harrington Media. Victoria leaned forward. I've been looking for someone to head up a new division, stories about women in impossible situations, domestic politics, power imbalances, the kind of thing that doesn't get enough coverage because the people living it are too afraid to speak up. She paused. And then I read Margaret's column about you, about what you've been through, and I thought, this woman knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not a journalist, Eliza said. No, but you're a storyteller. Victoria's gaze sharpened. You navigated 8 months in a house designed to erase you. You outmaneuvered one of the most powerful women in high society. And you did it without any resources, any allies, any safety net. She smiled. That takes intelligence, resilience, and a deep understanding of how power works. Which is exactly what I need. Eliza's heart was racing. What would the job entail? Editorial direction, story selection, working with writers and reporters to cover the kind of situations you lived through, but from a place of authority, not exploitation. Victoria's voice softened. I'm not interested in turning your pain into clickbait, Mrs. Ashford. I'm interested in giving other women a voice, and I think you're the right person to help me do that. Eliza looked at Victor. He was staring at Victoria like she'd just offered them a life raft in the middle of an ocean. What's the catch? Eliza asked. Victoria laughed. Smart woman. The catch is that it won't be easy. You'll be working with people who've been hurt, manipulated, silenced. You'll be dealing with powerful people who don't want their secrets exposed. And you'll be doing it under your own name, which means everything you do will be public, scrutinized. She paused. If you take this job, you won't be invisible anymore. Ever. For better or worse. Eliza thought about the drawing room, about Lady Ashford's roses, about 8 months of disappearing into a life that was never hers. I don't want to be invisible, she said quietly. Victoria smiled. Then we have a deal. They shook hands across the table, and Eliza felt something shift inside her, like a door opening onto a future she hadn't known existed. Victor reached for her hand under the table and squeezed. For the first time in months, Eliza felt like she could breathe all the way in. The news broke 3 days later. Margaret Caldwell ran another column, this time about Victoria Harrington hiring Eliza Ashford to head up a new editorial division. The headline read, "From Silence to Power, Eliza Ashford's Next Chapter." The reaction was immediate and divided. Some people applauded it, called Eliza brave, resilient, a symbol of what women could do when they refused to disappear. Others called her opportunistic, said she was exploiting her own trauma for profit, accused Victoria of using her as a publicity stunt. Eliza read the comments once, then closed her laptop and didn't look again. "They're going to tear you apart," Victor said quietly. They were sitting in the cottage's tiny living room, rain drumming against the windows. "Let them." Eliza leaned against his shoulder. "I've been torn apart before. I survived. This is different." "How?" "Because this time, you're choosing it." She thought about that. Maybe that's the point. I'm choosing to be seen, even if it's messy, even if people hate me for it. She looked up at him. "I'm done letting other people decide whether I get to exist." Victor was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm proud of you." "For what?" "For being braver than I was." Eliza's throat tightened. "You were brave too. Eventually." "Eventually," he echoed. He pulled her closer. "I just wish it hadn't taken me so long." "We're here now," she said softly. "That's what matters." They sat in the rain-soaked silence, holding each other, and Eliza realized something. For the first time since she'd married Victor Ashford, she felt like his wife. Not his secret. Not his shame. Not the woman he loved only in shadows. His wife. Out loud. In public. Where everyone could see. And it was terrifying and liberating and nothing like she'd imagined. But it was real. The first day at Harrington Media, Eliza wore a navy suit and walked through the building's glass doors with her head up. People stared, whispered, a few smiled, most didn't. Victoria met her in the lobby. "Ignore them," she said briskly. "They'll get used to you. And if they don't, then they'll leave, and we'll hire people who aren't assholes." Victoria steered her toward the elevators. "Come on, I'll show you your office." The office was small, just a desk, a chair, and a window overlooking the city. But it was hers. Her name was already on the door. Eliza Ashford, editorial director. She stood in the doorway, staring at those words, feeling something fierce and fragile blooming in her chest. "You okay?" Victoria asked. "Yeah." Eliza's voice was thick. "I'm okay." Victoria squeezed her shoulder once, then left her alone. Eliza sat down at the desk, opened her laptop, and got to work. The first story she greenlit was about a woman who'd been silenced by a non-disclosure agreement after reporting workplace harassment. The second was about a politician's wife who'd spent 15 years funding her husband's career while her own ambitions disappeared. The third was about a young mother trapped in a marriage where love existed only behind closed doors. Each story felt like a piece of herself she was giving back to the world. Each one felt like power reclaimed. 2 months in, Eliza got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Hello?" "Eliza." The voice was cold, controlled, unmistakable. "Lady Ashford." Eliza's hand tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "I want to talk." "We have nothing to talk about." "I disagree." A pause. "I'm at the cafe on 5th and Madison. Meet me in 20 minutes. "And if I don't?" "Then you'll never know what I have to say." Lady Ashford's voice was infuriatingly calm. "Your choice." The line went dead. Eliza sat there, staring at her phone, her pulse racing. She should ignore it, should delete the number and go back to work and forget Lady Ashford existed. But she didn't. 20 minutes later, she walked into the cafe. Lady Ashford sat at a corner table, looking exactly the same as she had the last time Eliza saw her. Polished, composed, untouchable. Eliza sat down across from her without being invited. "You have 5 minutes," Eliza said flatly. Lady Ashford's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "You've changed. You tried to erase me. I adapted." "Clearly." Lady Ashford folded her hands on the table. "I read about your work at Harrington Media. Impressive." "I'm not here for compliments." "No, you're here because you're curious." Lady Ashford leaned back. "You want to know why I called." 4 minutes, Lady Ashford sighed. Very well. I called because I underestimated you, and I don't like being wrong. Eliza blinked. That's it? That's it. Lady Ashford's gaze was steady. You were supposed to disappear. Instead, you became impossible to ignore. You were supposed to break. Instead, you built something new. She paused. I respect that, even if I don't like it. So what? You're apologizing. Absolutely not. Lady Ashford's voice was firm. I did what I thought was necessary to protect my family. I don't regret it. Then why are we here? Because Victor is my son. Lady Ashford's mask slipped just for a moment, and Eliza saw something beneath it, grief maybe, or regret. And because despite everything, I want him to be happy, even if that means accepting that I was wrong about you. Eliza stared at her. You're serious. I'm always serious. You froze my bank accounts. You tried to force me out. You made my life hell for 8 months. I did. Lady Ashford didn't flinch. And you survived, which tells me you're stronger than I gave you credit for. She leaned forward. So here's my offer. I'll restore Victor's access to the family estate. Not the full inheritance. He burned that bridge himself, but enough to make sure you're not struggling. In exchange for what? Nothing. Lady Ashford's smile was thin. Consider it an investment in my future grandchild. Eliza's hand went to her stomach, barely showing now beneath her suit jacket. Lady Ashford's gaze followed the movement. You're 16 weeks along, if I'm reading the timeline correctly. How did you... I'm thorough. Lady Ashford stood. Think about my offer. But don't take too long. I'm not known for my patience. She walked out, leaving Eliza sitting alone with a cold cup of coffee and a choice she hadn't expected to face. That night, she told Victor about the meeting. He listened without interrupting, his expression unreadable. What do you think? She asked when she finished. I think my mother doesn't do anything without a reason. But what's the reason? Victor was quiet for a long moment. I think she's scared. Of what? Of losing me completely. He looked at Eliza. She spent my whole life controlling everything, and now she can't control this, can't control you, can't control what happens next. He took her hand. So she's trying to make peace in the only way she knows how. By offering money. By offering an olive branch. Victor's thumb traced circles on her palm. The question is, do we take it? Eliza thought about the cottage with the leaky roof, about Victor's dwindling savings, about the baby growing inside her who deserved stability, even if it came from a complicated place. We take it, she said finally, but on our terms, not hers. Victor smiled, small and tired and real. Deal. 3 days later, Victor's bank account showed a transfer, not the full estate, but enough. Enough to breathe, enough to plan, enough to build something that wasn't collapsing under the weight of its own lies. And that night, lying in bed with Victor's hand resting on her stomach where their son was growing, Eliza realized something. They'd won. Not completely. Not perfectly. The damage was still there, scars that wouldn't fade, trust that would take years to rebuild. But they'd survived. And for the first time since she'd walked into that drawing room 8 months ago, Eliza felt like more than a ghost. She felt like a woman who'd fought for her own existence and won. She felt like a woman who'd fought for her own existence and won. But winning, Eliza was learning, didn't mean the war was over. The work at Harrington Media consumed her in ways she hadn't expected. Every story she touched felt personal. Women trapped in marriages that looked perfect from the outside, mothers hiding bruises under designer clothes, daughters silenced by family reputations they didn't ask to carry. She read their submissions late into the night, her laptop glowing in the dark while Victor slept beside her. Some nights she cried. Some nights she got angry. And some nights she just sat there, staring at the words on the screen, thinking about how close she'd come to becoming another untold story. 3 months into the job, a letter arrived at her office. It wasn't typed. The handwriting was shaky, uncertain, written on notebook paper that looked like it had been folded and unfolded a dozen times. Dear Mrs. Ashford, I saw your interview on the morning show last week, the one where you talked about being invisible in your own marriage. I've been invisible for 12 years. I didn't know other people felt this way. I didn't know I was allowed to say it out loud. Thank you for saying it first. A. Eliza read it 3 times, then pressed it against her chest and cried in her office for 10 minutes straight. Victoria found her like that, mascara smeared, breathing uneven, the letter clutched in her hands. "You okay?" Victoria asked from the doorway. "Yeah." Eliza wiped her face. Someone wrote to me. We get letters all the time." "I know, but—" Eliza held it out. "Read this." Victoria scanned it, her expression softening. "This is why we do it," she said quietly. "This right here." "I know." Eliza's voice cracked. "I just didn't think it would feel like this." "Like what?" "Like it matters." Victoria smiled, sad and knowing. "It always mattered, Eliza. You just couldn't see it yet." That night, Eliza brought the letter home and showed it to Victor. He read it in silence, sitting at their tiny kitchen table while she made tea. Neither of them would drink. "You're changing people's lives," he said finally. "I'm just telling stories. That's how you change lives." He set the letter down carefully. "By telling the truth when everyone else is pretending." Eliza sat down across from him. At 22 weeks pregnant, her body was changing in ways that still surprised her. The curve of her belly, the way her back ached after long days, the small kicks that woke her at odd hours. Victor's hand found her stomach automatically now, a gesture so natural it didn't need words. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Regret what?" "Choosing me, losing everything." Victor looked at her for a long moment. "I didn't lose everything, Eliza. I lost the things that were killing me." His hand pressed gently against where their son was growing. "This is everything. You are everything. And no, I don't regret it. Even when the bills come? Even then." He smiled, tired but real. "We'll figure it out. We always do." She leaned across the table and kissed him, soft, grateful, anchored in a present that finally felt like theirs. The phone rang. Victor pulled back with a groan. "If that's another creditor—" "It's mine." Eliza checked the screen. Unknown number. She almost sent it to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Hello?" "Mrs. Ashford." The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. "My name is David Chen. I'm an attorney representing the Coalition for Domestic Advocacy. We'd like to speak with you about a case." Eliza straightened. "What kind of case?" "The kind that needs someone who understands what it's like to be silenced." A pause. "We're building a class action lawsuit against several prominent families who've used NDAs and financial coercion to keep women from speaking out about abuse. We've been following your work, and we think you could help us." Her pulse quickened. "How? Consultation? Expert testimony? Possibly editorial support to make sure these women's stories get told properly?" His voice softened. "We're not asking you to relive your trauma, Mrs. Ashford, but we are asking you to help other women avoid it." Eliza looked at Victor. He was watching her, eyebrows raised in question. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course." "But Mrs. Ashford?" Chen's voice carried weight. "These women don't have much time. The families are already trying to bury this. We need someone who knows how to fight back." "I'll call you tomorrow," she said. "Thank you." The line went dead. Victor leaned forward. "What was that about?" Eliza told him. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then, "This could be dangerous." "I know. The families they're going after, they have resources, lawyers, power." "I know." "Eliza." He stopped, searching for words. "I just got you back. I don't want to lose you to another fight." "You won't lose me." She took his hand. "But I can't walk away from this. Not when I know what it feels like to need help and have everyone turn their backs." Victor's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Okay, then we do it together." "Victor, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." His voice was firm. "You stood alone for 8 months because I was too much of a coward to stand with you. I'm not making that mistake again." Eliza's throat closed up. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." She called David Chen the next morning and said yes. The case was worse than she'd imagined. 17 women, ages ranging from 23 to 58, all of them bound by ND, as that prevented them from speaking about what they'd endured: physical abuse, financial control, systematic isolation. Some had tried to leave and been threatened. Others had left and been destroyed in the press by families with enough power to shape narratives. Eliza sat in conference rooms listening to their stories, taking notes, asking questions that made her want to scream and cry and burn the whole system down. One woman, Sarah, 34, mother of two, had been locked in her bedroom for 3 days when she'd tried to file for divorce. Another, Grace, 41, former lawyer, had been blacklisted from her profession after her ex-husband's family made a few phone calls to the right people. "They told everyone I was unstable," Grace said, her voice hollow, "that I'd made everything up for attention. Within 6 months, I couldn't get hired anywhere." She looked at Eliza. "How do you fight people who can rewrite reality?" "You tell the truth," Eliza said quietly. "Loud enough that they can't drown it out." Grace's eyes filled. "And if no one listens? Then you keep telling it until they do." The deposition started in January. Eliza wasn't testifying. Her situation was different enough that it wouldn't help the case. But she sat in on every session, watching lawyers tear into these women's lives, trying to find cracks in their stories. It was brutal. They questioned everything. Why didn't you leave sooner? Why didn't you call the police? Why did you stay if it was so bad? Each question designed to make the women doubt themselves, to make them look unreliable. Eliza watched Sarah break down on the stand, watched Grace's hands shake so badly she could barely hold her water glass, and felt rage burning through her like acid. During a break, she found David Chen in the hallway. "This is wrong," she said. "I know. They're treating these women like criminals. That's how it works." Chen's face was grim. "The other side's job is to discredit them, make them seem irrational, emotional, dishonest. It's working." "Maybe." He looked at her. "But we're not done yet." "What else can we do?" Chen hesitated. "We could call you." Eliza blinked. "What?" "As a witness. Not to testify about abuse, to testify about the power dynamics, the way these families operate, the systematic silencing." He leaned against the wall. "You're not bound by an NDA. You've already gone public. And you have credibility. Editorial director at Harrington Media, public figure, someone people recognize." He paused. "If you tell them what it's like to be erased by people with power, it might make them listen differently to these other women. Or it might blow up in our faces." "It might," Chen admitted. "But right now we're losing. And I think you might be the only person who can change that." Eliza thought about the drawing room, about Lady Ashford's roses, about 8 months of silence that had nearly destroyed her. "When do you need an answer?" "Tomorrow." She went home and told Victor. He listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. "You know what they'll do to you," he said when she finished. "I have some idea. They'll dig up everything, every mistake you've ever made, every moment you weren't perfect." His hands clenched. "They'll try to destroy you the same way they're trying to destroy those other women." "I know. And you're going to do it anyway." "Yes." Victor looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time all over again. "You're terrifying," he said quietly. "Is that a compliment?" "It's the truth." He stood, crossing to her. "You scare the hell out of me, Eliza, in the best possible way." She laughed, shaky and uncertain. "I'm scared too." "Good." He pulled her close. "Means you're paying attention." She testified 3 days later. The courtroom was smaller than she'd expected. Fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs, the smell of old coffee and tension. The opposing counsel, 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than her car, sat at their table looking bored and predatory. David Chen gave her a slight nod as she took the stand. The bailiff swore her in. She promised to tell the truth and meant it. The first hour was easy. Chen walked her through her background, her marriage, the arrangement. She spoke carefully, precisely, sticking to facts. Then the other side got their turn. The lead attorney, a woman named Patricia Vance with sharp eyes and sharper questions, stood up with a smile that didn't reach her face. "Mrs. Ashford," she began, "you've built quite a career out of your marriage troubles, haven't you?" Eliza's jaw tightened. "I've built a career helping other women tell their stories. By exploiting your own. By refusing to stay silent." Vance's smile thinned. "Let's talk about that silence. You claim you were forced to hide your relationship with Mr. Ashford, but isn't it true that you agreed to the arrangement willingly?" I didn't know what I was agreeing to. You're a grown woman, Mrs. Ashford. Surely you understood the terms. I understood that I loved him. I didn't understand that love would be used as a weapon against me. Vance pulled out a document. This is the marriage contract you signed. Did you read it? Eliza's stomach dropped. Yes. And it clearly states that certain public appearances would be limited, correct? It says Victor would attend some events alone. It doesn't say I'd be erased. Erased. Vance's tone was mocking. Strong word for someone who's now a public figure, published in major media outlets, sitting in a courtroom by choice. I'm public now because I fought for it, not because anyone gave it to me. Or because you realized there was money in victimhood. The courtroom went silent. Eliza felt heat rising in her chest. Anger, sharp and clean. You think I did this for money? Didn't you? You went from a comfortable marriage to a media career based entirely on that marriage's collapse. I went from being invisible to being seen. If that looks like opportunity to you, then you've never been invisible in your life. Vance's expression hardened. Let's talk about your credibility, Mrs. Ashford. You've admitted to calling a journalist and feeding her information about your husband's family. Isn't that a betrayal of trust? It was an act of survival. It was a calculated move to gain leverage. It was both. Eliza leaned forward. I was trapped in a house where I had no money, no allies, no voice. So yes, I called Margaret Caldwell. I gave her a story that would force my husband to choose, and I'd do it again. Even though it destroyed his career? His career was built on my silence. If it couldn't survive the truth, then it deserved to be destroyed. Vance paused, recalibrating. You're aware that several of the families involved in this case are personal acquaintances of the Ashford family. I am. Does that create a conflict of interest for you? No. Really? You don't think your personal grievances might color your testimony? Eliza took a breath. My personal grievances, as you call them, taught me exactly how these families operate. They taught me what it looks like when powerful people decide you don't matter, when they use money and social pressure and systematic isolation to make you disappear. Her voice steadied. So no, I don't think that's a conflict of interest. I think that's exactly why I'm qualified to be here. Vance stared at her for a long moment. Then she smiled, cold and knowing. No further questions. Eliza stepped down, legs shaking. Victor was waiting in the hallway. He pulled her into his arms without a word, and she let herself shake against his chest until the adrenaline faded. You were incredible, he whispered. I was angry. You were both. He kissed her forehead. Come on, let's get out of here. They went home to the cottage and didn't talk about the trial for the rest of the night. The verdict came 6 weeks later. Eliza was at work when David Chen called. We won, he said, and she heard tears in his voice. What? All 17 cases. The judge ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. The NDAs are void. The families have to pay damages. He laughed, broken and relieved. We actually won. Eliza sat down hard in her office chair. How? Your testimony, the way you explained the power dynamics, it reframed everything. The judge cited you specifically in her ruling. He paused. You did this, Eliza. We did this, she corrected. Fine, we did this. But you were the one who made them listen. After she hung up, Eliza sat in her office for a long time, staring at the city through her window. 17 women who would finally be able to speak. 17 stories that wouldn't stay buried. 17 lives that might have a chance to rebuild. She pressed her hand to her stomach. 34 weeks now, the baby active and restless, and thought about what kind of world she was bringing him into. A world that still had too much silence, too much power in the wrong hands, too many women who were taught to disappear, but also a world where sometimes, if you fought hard enough, you could win. That night, Victor came home with flowers. Cheap grocery store flowers, nothing fancy, but he presented them like they were made of gold. What's this for? Eliza asked, taking them. Because you're brilliant and terrifying, and I love you. He kissed her. And because we won. Chen called you too? He sent me the ruling. I've read it 4 times. Victor pulled her close, careful of her belly. You changed the game, Eliza. You know that, right? I just told the truth. Yeah, and the truth burned down everything they'd built. He pulled back to look at her. I'm proud of you. Even though it cost us everything, we didn't lose everything. His hand found her stomach. We lost the things that were slowly killing us, and we found this instead. The baby kicked, hard enough that Victor felt it through her dress. He agrees, Eliza said, smiling. Smart kid. They stood in their tiny kitchen, holding each other while dinner burned on the stove and the flowers sat forgotten on the counter, and Eliza realized she'd never been happier. Not in the drawing room with its crystal and lies. Not in the big house with its secrets and silence. Here, in this cramped space with a man who'd finally learned how to choose her in the light. The baby came 6 weeks later, born at 2 a.m. after 14 hours of labor that left Eliza wrung out and shaking. Victor stayed the whole time, holding her hand, whispering things she couldn't quite hear through the pain. When the doctor finally placed their son in her arms, small and screaming and perfect, Victor cried harder than she did. He's here, he kept saying, like he couldn't quite believe it. He's actually here. Eliza looked down at their son's face, red and furious and beautiful, and felt something shift inside her, a fierce, protective love she'd never experienced before. What do we call him? Victor asked. They'd argued about names for months, never settled on anything. But looking at him now, Eliza knew. James, she said quietly. After my father. Victor's eyes widened. Are you sure? Her father had died when she was 12. Hadn't lived to see her wedding, her career, any of the life she'd built. But he taught her to stand up for herself, to speak when everyone else wanted her quiet. She wished he could have met this baby. I'm sure, she said. James Ashford. Victor tested it out, then smiled. I like it. Me too. James chose that moment to stop crying, his tiny face relaxing into something almost peaceful. Victor reached out, touching one impossibly small hand. Hey kid, he whispered. Welcome to the family. It's complicated, but we're working on it. Eliza laughed, tired and overwhelmed and more in love than she'd ever been. They brought James home 3 days later to a cottage that suddenly felt too small for everything they were feeling. The first month was a blur of sleepless nights, endless diapers, and moments of pure panic when they had no idea what they were doing. But they figured it out together, fumbling, exhausted, making mistakes and fixing them. And slowly, the world they'd been building solidified into something real. Victoria visited when James was 6 weeks old, bringing an enormous stuffed elephant and a job offer. I want to make you senior editorial director, she said, sitting in their living room while James slept on Eliza's chest. More money, more control, your own team. Eliza blinked. Why? Because the work you've done in the last year has tripled our readership. Because women are writing to us in numbers we've never seen before. Because you're good at this, Eliza. Victoria smiled. And because you deserve it. I have a 6-week-old baby, so work from home 3 days a week. Bring him to the office when you need to. We'll figure it out. Victoria leaned forward. I'm not asking you to choose between your career and your kid. I'm asking you to build both. On your terms. Eliza looked at James, sleeping peacefully against her. Then at Victor, standing in the doorway with a bottle in one hand and cautious hope in his eyes. Okay, she said. I'll do it. Victoria's smile widened. Good. Start in 2 weeks. After she left, Victor sat down beside Eliza. You sure about this? No, Eliza admitted. But I wasn't sure about any of this, and it worked out. Fair point. He kissed her temple. We'll make it work. Together? Together. The promotion came with enough money to move. Not back to the estate. Neither of them wanted that. But to a small house on the edge of the city with 3 bedrooms, a backyard, and enough space to breathe. They packed up the cottage slowly, sorting through belongings that had somehow accumulated in less than a year. Eliza found the pregnancy test, still wrapped in tissue paper, still tucked in the nightstand drawer. You kept this? Victor asked, looking over her shoulder. I didn't know what else to do with it. She turned it over in her hands. It felt important. It was important. He took it from her, studying it. This was the beginning of everything. Or the end. Both. He set it down gently. Are you keeping it? Eliza thought about it. Then she wrapped it back up and tucked it into a box labeled Memories. Yeah, she said. I think I am. They moved into the new house on a Saturday in June. It was chaos. Boxes everywhere, furniture that didn't quite fit, James fussing because his schedule was disrupted. But by nightfall, they'd set up the bedroom, assembled the crib, and ordered pizza that they ate sitting on the floor because they couldn't find the table yet. "This is ours," Victor said, looking around. "Really ours." "Yeah." Eliza leaned against him, exhausted. "It is." No arrangements, no compromises, no one telling us how to live. Just us. Victor kissed her, slow and deep and full of promise. Just us. James started crying from the other room. They both laughed. "And him," Victor amended. "And him," Eliza agreed. 6 months later, Margaret Caldwell published a follow-up column. The headline read, "The Ashfords Revisited, a Year After the Fall." Eliza almost didn't read it, but curiosity won out. Margaret had written about the trial, the verdict, the work Eliza was doing at Harrington Media. But she'd also written about the cottage, the new house, the baby, about how Victor had rebuilt his career from scratch. Consulting work, nothing fancy, but honest and his. The last paragraph made Eliza's throat tight. "A year ago, I wrote about a marriage built on lies and a woman erased by the man who claimed to love her. Today, I'm writing about two people who dismantled that lie piece by piece and built something true in its place. It's not perfect, it's not polished, but it's real. And in a world of carefully curated facades, that might be the most radical thing of all." Eliza set down the paper. Victor came into the kitchen, James on his hip, both of them covered in what looked like mashed banana. "We had an incident," Victor said sheepishly. "I can see that." "In my defense, he started it." Eliza laughed, real and full and unguarded. "Come here." Victor crossed to her, and she wrapped her arms around both of them, breathing in the smell of baby soap and coffee and home. "I love you," she said against his shoulder. "I love you too." James chose that moment to grab a fistful of her hair. "Ow, James, no!" Victor disentangled the baby's hand, grinning. "He's got your grip." "That's your grip. He's stubborn like you." "He's stubborn like you." They bickered gently while James giggled, and Eliza thought about how far they'd come. From a drawing room full of strangers to a kitchen full of laughter, from silence to noise, from invisible to undeniably, messily, perfectly present. The anniversary of Victor's confession came on a cold November afternoon. Eliza hadn't been planning anything, but when she came home from work, she found Victor in the living room, standing in front of the fireplace, with all the doors in the house wide open. "What are you doing?" she asked, setting down her bag. "Keeping a promise." He turned to her. "A year ago, I told you I'd throw open every door, that I'd choose you in the light, and I meant it." He gestured at the open doors. "So this is me, making sure I remember." Eliza's eyes filled. "Victor, every door," he said quietly, "so everyone can see, so there's no more hiding." She crossed the room and kissed him, hard and grateful, and full of a love that had survived being tested in ways she'd never imagined. When they pulled apart, James was toddling toward them, newly steady on his feet, babbling something that might have been dada or might have been nonsense. Victor scooped him up. "What do you think, kid? Doors open or closed?" James reached for the nearest door and pushed it wider. "Open it is," Victor said, laughing. That night, after James was asleep and the house was quiet, Eliza stood at the window of their bedroom, looking out at the city lights. Victor came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "Everything." She leaned back against him. "The drawing room, your mother, the trial, all of it." "Regrets?" "No." She turned in his arms. "I'm thinking about how I almost let myself disappear. How close I came to staying invisible just because it was easier than fighting." "But you didn't." "No." She smiled. "I didn't." "Good." He kissed her forehead. "Because the world's better with you in it." Cheesy. True. They stood there in the dark, holding each other, and Eliza thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, terrified, trapped, convinced she had no power. That woman wouldn't recognize her now, and that was exactly how it should be. The final piece fell into place 3 months later. Eliza was at work when her assistant knocked on her office door. "Someone's here to see you," she said. "She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." Who is it? She wouldn't say. Just asked if you had time. Eliza sighed, checking her calendar. She had a meeting in 30 minutes, but fine. Send her in. The door opened. Lady Ashford walked in. Eliza stood slowly. What are you doing here? I came to apologize. Lady Ashford's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she set her purse down. May I sit? Eliza gestured at the chair across from her desk. Lady Ashford sat with perfect posture, hands folded in her lap. For a long moment, she just looked at Eliza. You look well, she said finally. Thank you. Motherhood suits you. It's exhausting. It always is. Lady Ashford's smile was small, sad. I came because I owe you an apology, a real one, not the half measures I gave you before. Eliza waited. I was wrong, Lady Ashford said quietly. About you. About what Victor needed. About what mattered. She took a breath. I spent my entire life building power for this family, and I convinced myself that power was the same thing as protection, that if we were strong enough, influential enough, nothing could hurt us. Her voice cracked, just slightly. But I hurt my son, and I hurt you, and I nearly destroyed the one thing that actually mattered. Why are you telling me this now? Because I saw James. Lady Ashford's eyes filled. Victor brought him to see me last week, and when I held my grandson, I realized... She stopped, composing herself. I realized that none of the power I built matters if my family hates me, if my son can't trust me, if my grandson grows up thinking I'm the villain. Eliza's chest tightened. What do you want from me? Nothing. Lady Ashford met her eyes. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to forget what I did. I just wanted you to know that I was wrong and that I'm sorry. Silence stretched between them. I don't forgive you, Eliza said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I understand. But... Eliza took a breath. I don't want James growing up in a family divided by old wounds. So if you want to be part of his life, if you want to try to rebuild things with Victor, then I won't stop you. She leaned forward. But you do it on our terms. No manipulation, no control, no trying to dictate how we live. Lady Ashford nodded. Agreed. And if you hurt Victor again, or try to hurt James, I will make what I did before look like mercy. Do you understand? I do. Eliza studied her, this woman who'd tried to erase her, who'd held power like a weapon, who was now sitting in her office asking for a second chance she didn't deserve. Okay, Eliza said quietly. Then we'll try. Lady Ashford stood, collected her purse. At the door she paused. For what it's worth, she said, you're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. Victor is lucky to have you. I know, Eliza said simply. Lady Ashford smiled, genuine this time, and left. Eliza sat in her office for a long time after she'd gone, processing. Then she picked up her phone and called Victor. Your mother just apologized to me, she said when he answered. I know, I told her to. You told her to? I said if she wanted to meet James again, she needed to apologize to you first. Actually, apologize. He paused. Did she? Yeah. Eliza leaned back in her chair. She did. And? And I told her we'd try. On our terms. Victor was quiet for a moment. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This could blow up in our faces. Probably. She heard the smile in his voice. But we're good at fixing explosions now. We really are, Eliza said, and hung up smiling. 2 years later, Eliza published her first book. It wasn't a memoir. She'd had enough of living in her own story. Instead, it was a collection of essays from women who'd been silenced and found their voices. Their words, their truths, compiled and edited and given space to breathe. The launch party was at a bookstore in the city, small and crowded and loud with conversation. Victor was there, James on his shoulders, both of them looking proud and slightly overwhelmed. Victoria stood near the back, beaming. Even Margaret Caldwell had shown up, notebook in hand. And in the corner, half hidden behind a bookshelf, Lady Ashford watched with an expression Eliza couldn't quite read. When it was time for Eliza to speak, the room quieted. She stood at the front, book in hand, and looked out at all these people who'd become part of her story. This book exists because 17 women refused to stay silent, she began, because they risked everything to tell the truth. And because sometimes when you refuse to disappear, the world has no choice but to see you. She talked about the trial, the verdict, the letters she still received from women who felt invisible. And then she talked about what came after. Winning doesn't mean everything gets fixed, she said. It doesn't erase the damage or heal the wounds overnight, but it does mean you get to choose what happens next. You get to build something new. She looked at Victor. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, you get to build it with someone who finally learned how to stand in the light with you. The room erupted in applause. After the event, after the crowds had thinned and the bookstore was closing, Eliza found herself standing on the sidewalk with Victor and James. "You did good tonight," Victor said. "We did good." She took his hand. All of us. James, now 3 and endlessly energetic, tugged on Victor's sleeve. "Home?" "Yeah, kid. Home." They walked through the city streets, James between them, holding both their hands. And Eliza thought about doors, the ones that had been slammed in her face, the ones she'd kicked down herself, the ones Victor had finally thrown open. She thought about silence, invisibility, and the cost of refusing to disappear. And she thought about home. Not the estate with its marble floors and secrets, but this. The 3 of them, walking through the night, messy and imperfect and completely, undeniably real. "I love you," she said to Victor. "I love you too." James looked up at both of them. "Love you." They laughed and kept walking. Somewhere behind them, a door closed. And ahead of them, every door stood open.